And so, yeah, I hope you have a really, really good group. And John Dalton is here with you to present this workshop, which looks really interesting. And early in the year, we spent a bit of time emailing and back and forth and stuff, and sort of getting this one, you know, I think really suited and really spot on, I felt, for the likes of us here and what we had done. So it was good to see John again. It was 2.5 years ago. He was in Joburg. So one or two or three of you were up there for that one, so you'll have him again. Otherwise, I think he's new to all of you. And John set up an Institute of Cranial Work and taught courses for years in Brisbane. But he's an Irish lad at heart, you know, and has just been in Dublin seeing his daughter and family. And then he's come by Dublin, Frankfurt, Joburg, Cape Town, 17 hours. And he's well rested. You know, he's well suited. We've sat down and discussed everything, almost. So, yeah, and it's just a pleasure to have John, because his mind and his actions, you know, always get me thinking, and he's much better organized than I could ever be in these things. I can throw things out and I kind of leave them dangling for you, which I know. And now someone like John comes along and he'll sort of, you know, tie everything up. And this is what I'm hoping. And that's why I keep asking him to come. You know, I don't feel that what you've learned is deficient. I just feel that what you've learned is a foundation that'll fit rather well with what John is doing. You know, that foundation. So, yeah, and John has a complicated background, some parts of which I would never share, except possibly around, you know, a few drinks in the evening in the fireplace, and, you know, when things get loose. But yes, a tremendously varied background, part of which is in film. And John has hopes of getting some of this valuable cranial work, you know, in a presentable form for different groups of people, so that we'd have something to, you know, maybe even something to take home and look at and review, that kind of thing. So that's why John's got the camera here. He's making an effort to try to get this stuff in a presentable form. And not just here, but internationally. Wouldn't it be lovely to have a little video of different people working in different ways from around the world, you know, as part of the course? And this is what the kind of thing that John's doing here. So I hope you'll just, you know, ignore that camera and get on with it. Yeah? So I give you John, dear friend, great practitioner, and I think the kind of teacher I would like to be. You know, yeah, sort of, yeah. No, really, you know, no, seriously.
Let's go home now.
Okay. Yeah, so welcome, John, and, you know, treat him really well. Yeah, he keeps saying he has a low quotient of, you know, appreciation of BS, but he's Irish, you know. So enjoy yourselves.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got 3 days to get through lots of different things, lots of different approaches, different aspects. And pretty much what I'll be doing is letting you into my personal world. So it's not the word according to John. It's not like you've got to believe anything I say or do anything I say. It's more that once you get over the basics, once you know the techniques, then you start to get into your thing, what's specific for you, your own particular genius. And it's kind of that cliche of, you've all learned how to paint, and now you're in the process of becoming artists, or you're in the process of the artist within you coming out. Because you've all, like, techniques are like your basic things of how to paint, and then what you paint is what's unique to you. So what I'm hoping is that through giving you a little window into my particular unique perspective, that will help you get yourself more into that, because it's from that place that the really good stuff happens. Does that make sense? So that roughly divides down into three kind of areas. There's what goes on inside you, which is probably, if that's not happening right, nothing else is going to happen right. If you haven't got your own inner state together, people just won't get better. It's as simple as that. You can be really good at all the techniques, you can really be good at lots of different things, but if you haven't, on the inside, got yourself together and know what's going on, it's unlikely people will get as better to the degree that you kind of think that they can, or you have a sense that they can. So we'll be going into inner state, your inner states, and I'll be giving you a couple of different perspectives on that to maybe, I don't know, help you get into that a bit more, or explore it a bit more, and start to see the power of it. We'll be looking at the out, like that's an inner focus. Well, there'll be an outer focus as well. We'll be talking about why people get sick, why they get better, how that whole thing happens, what really goes on for people, what's the story with people, how does it interact with your story, what's the bigger picture, what's the biggest perspective you can get on the person who walks in your treatment room. Yeah? And then there'll be this kind of point where this inner focus and this outer focus come together. There's a guy in Australia who's writing a book about Craniosacral, and he talks about it as being like the beach. It's the place where the water and the land meet, and that's where it happens really. It's where what you bring to it, your inner state, where you bring that to their story. It's where the two interact, and it's how that kind of thing goes together that makes a difference between whether people are going to get better or not. So they're the main three kind of areas, and they'll be all kind of interweaved together throughout the 3 days. Generally how we'll go is we'll do lots of sort of talking and thinking about things in the morning, and then we'll do lots of doing in the afternoon, after lunch when everyone's feeling kind of sleepy. That's when we'll get up and do something, okay? I'm good with questions. I prefer questions. Don't get all upset if I won't answer your question, because sometimes it'll be like, oh, we're going to do that tomorrow. But I like getting questions. Oh, yeah. And pretty much, I'll probably contradict myself all the time. I won't be doing that on purpose or just to be difficult. It's because paradox is a big part of craniosacral work. And I'll lay out something and it'll make lots of sense, and then I'll probably totally contradict it and just give you the other perspective on things. And that's all to do with breaking up any kind of rigidity or certainty that you have, because that's one of the things that gets in the way big time to being able to be flexible enough and fluid enough to stay with somebody in their process. And things are not black and white. I haven't found that to be the case. They're grey. Everything's grey. So there's never a this means that kind of thing. So I'll probably keep pointing you towards all the paradoxes that I've fallen over, because just when I sort of think I'd figure something out, I'd hit into something that will just totally wreck everything on me. And after a while you get pretty flexible and nothing is certain. And I think that's good, because it means it leaves you much more fluid. I'll tell you a bit about my story. I'd say I've been developing my palpatory skills, or my ability to read people, pretty much from the time I was conceived, I'd say. Don't think I'm special in that regard, but like my family is an Irish Catholic family, so I was the 5th child. So, you know, good chance they weren't too delighted at the idea. My mother wouldn't have been like overwhelmingly relieved. pleased that she was going to have another baby. So right from conception, somewhere I would have been going, I don't feel particularly welcome here. Or me, them. You know? Just, that's probably, wouldn't have even, you know, wouldn't have been a thought, but it would have been a sense of, from unity to slight disunity. And in that, straight away, in the womb, I would have been trying to figure out what that was all about. As I say, I was born into a biggish family. So I had to be able to figure out what was going on fast. I had to be able to figure out what was going on for my parents and my brothers and sisters for survival. You just develop these skills. My father died when I was 9, then my mother went into this grieving period. There was no counselling for her, so my palpatory skills or my ability to read jumped, had to jump, because I had to, I mean, I could remember waking up on a Saturday morning, and in bed I could tell what mood my mother was in, and she would have been one floor down, probably the other side of the house. So that was really useful. Training. Yeah. I did lots of different kinds of jobs. I was a carpenter, I was a truck driver sort of thing. I can't remember them now. I've done plumbing, I've done all that kind of construction stuff. And then I got involved in cartoons. I was an animation cameraman for a long time. Any of you seen the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Yes, well, I did a lot of work on that. If you look in the credits, you'll see my name. That's my claim to fame, I suppose. I was on telly for a while. I did some kids shows. I was a presenter. I've made documentaries. I've done lots of film and TV kind of stuff. And always interested in photography. I had an exhibition of my photography that I was touring around when I heard about Craniosacral. That was about 11 years ago. And I'd done a lot of meditation, and I've always had a kind of spiritual thing going on. So I was probably pretty good on the old intuition front, because when I heard of Craniosacral, there was something about it. I was never interested in healing, never interested in this kind of work at all, not even slightly. And when I heard about it, I don't know, it was just one of those things. I've heard lots of people say that have had the same experience. They just kind of went, yeah, that's the thing for me. And of course, you know, I had my whole other part of my brain was going, what are you talking about? You know, we've got the film, photography thing, script writing thing. Can we just keep doing that? So I managed to avoid it for about 6 months. But it was remarkable, you know. I never heard Craniosacral before. And then for 6 months, you know, I kept bumping into people who would say, have you heard about this Craniosacral thing? And eventually I kind of got worn out by it. I just thought, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. So I went to my friend who had a natural therapies clinic. And literally I walked in and there was a brochure for Thomas Athley's College on his desk that had just arrived. And I sort of walked in and said, oh, that's for me. Thanks, Bruce. He's actually an Australian fella. And I started. And probably because I had that intuitive thing bringing me into it, it helped a lot. Because on the first day it didn't help at all, because I'm sitting there in a room like this, there was more people, and Al was the main tutor. He used to come over from England to Dublin. So he was, like, I had him for my first 3, 4, 5 parts, and then I had Thomas, who I didn't really get on with that well. It's not that I didn't get on with him, I didn't like him as much as Al. So yeah, we're all sitting around there, and Al is doing the let's all get to know each other thing, and he's like, can you just say what your name is and what your experience is? And there are people behind me going, oh yeah, I'm a reflexologist, and I'm a kinesiologist, and the next person's an acupuncturist, and the next person's a massage therapist, and I'm like, oh shit. And so he gets to me, and he says, so you know, tell us about yourself, John. I'm like, well, I just had an exhibition of my photography. That didn't go down very well. Then I drew the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle card. That didn't go down well either. And I think Al was kind of going, who'll let this guy in? But it didn't matter, because I kind of wasn't there in a rational, logical kind of way. And even though I found the whole of physiology and anatomy really hard, it certainly helped me when it came to teaching, because I could totally relate to people who had trouble with it. But at the time, yeah, I just found it very difficult. But I never was too concerned about it because it was like, well, it's kind of crazy that I'm here anyway, so I'll just keep going with it. And yeah, of that class, so just when I was back there's very few people actually kept it up and followed through, which is kind of interesting. So it's, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. You don't have to have any background. I don't think. I never had that kind of criteria for people that I trained. I was more interested in how much they were driven by their compassion than anything else, how much they wanted to help people. So that's sort of, oh yeah, then I went to Australia. Oh yeah, I've been married, I've been divorced, I've got a kid in Ireland, I've got another kid in Australia. And I've been through the ringer like everybody else, which has really helped me with my empathy. Because the more life experience that you have, the more heartache you have, the more pain you've experienced, well, you sort of softens you up a bit, makes you a bit more, you know, sort of, you've got less of the, well, I'll give you an example. I had a student, a youngish student, he was in his 20s, and we have, you know, student clinics every month where everybody comes in and they talk about their patients and that kind of thing. And he was in one time and he said, I've got this woman, you know, that I'm treating, and she's just really fat. And I was like, okay. Even the way he said it was like very judgmental, you know. So I was like, okay, you know, he's young. And he said, you know, I said to her, why don't you just stop eating? You know, problem solved. And it was so funny because there were people who hadn't trained as much as him, you know, like people who were just starting, but they were older, they lived a bit longer. And they were falling around the place laughing. They thought it was hilarious that he was being so naive about how to solve people's problems or how people solve their own problems. So yeah, having lots of life experience is great, and it's helped me a lot. So yeah, we got to Australia and there was no good training, so I set up this institute, the Australian Institute of Craniosacral Therapy. I got the course accredited with the government and did all that stuff, which apparently has been quite a miracle. I didn't realise, but I've talked to people who are involved in training in Australia, and they were like, how did you do that? Like, because it's very bureaucratic, it's a big deal. But it helped me a lot, actually. It made me a much better trainer because it forced me to assess everything. Everything that if I taught somebody 100 techniques, I had to assess every single technique. And we'll talk about how useful that was to me tomorrow and the next day when there are things I discovered about that I had to, see, when I started off first, everybody did it on me, so I'd lie there, you know, and I'd have all these bad frontal lifts, bad mandible releases, and, you know, I ended up with TMJ for a while as a result of all this bad work. So that forced me to find new ways of assessing people, which actually made me realize that my palpatory skills were a lot more than I thought. And hopefully by the end of the 3 days, you'll have discovered that your palpatory skills are a lot higher than you would have thought. So that really helped me a lot. Yeah, so that's pretty much my story. All of that experience, all of everything, has given me a certain kind of presence, particularly when I'm treating people. And your presence when you're treating people is crucial. It makes a huge difference how your presence is. This is probably not new to you, is it? No, good. But one of the things we'll be doing over the next 3 days is taking words that we use all the time, like stillness. Use that word a lot? You ever really thought about it though? Like, because you see, difficult concepts, you can just use these words and I can say, okay, let's all get still. And you'll all do it. But if you have to really, well, what does that mean? What are we talking about when we say words like that? It makes you really start to think about it. And the more you quantify it, the more, I don't mean quantify it, the more you look at it, the more solid it gets. And the more you understand it, and the more you understand it, the more comfortable you are with it, and the more in mastery of it you become. Because that's what you're in the process of. You're in the process of becoming masters of this particular thing. Does that make sense? So presence is really important. And I've got this really nice little thing in your notes. on page 5 about rainmakers. I really like this idea, and I like this description. It says in India there's a tradition of calling a rainmaker when there's a drought. Rainmakers don't do anything to make the rain happen. They just come to the village and stay there, and the rain comes. Cool, huh? They don't make the rain come, they allow it. Or more exactly, their inner atmosphere of allowing and affirming what is creates a climate in which what needs to be happens. Sound familiar? It's good, isn't it? It's a nice little thing. Yeah, that allowing was supposed to be in bold as well, so sorry about that. You can put a circle around it or whatever. So I'll be kind of referring back to rainmakers a lot, because it's very hard to be, straight away we're into the paradoxes. You're engaged in helping somebody, but the most helpful thing you can do is to do nothing. But then you could say, well, why don't I just sit at home and do nothing? Wouldn't that work as well? I was just joking with Al on the way in the car about distant healing or absent healing. I'm not disparaging it or anything, but I was joking about how do they market themselves at those psychic fairs? Like, do they have a booth with nobody in it? And because if they're there, you can't be there. And, you know what I mean? Anyway, that's sort of off topic, but fully off the topic actually. But anyway, yeah, sort of think about it. It's like, what do I do with dehydrated water? You know, it's just to think about it. Anyway, presence and developing presence and understanding your presence and working with it more. That's the kind of package actually that will be at the end of it. Hopefully, that's what you'll have got more into. Have you had anybody come to you and before they start, or you're talking to somebody at a party or something, and they say, "So is this like faith healing? Do I have to believe in this for it to work?" You ever had that? Put your hands up so I can see. Sorry?
That type of thing, not exactly faith, but
To have to believe.
Yeah.
So what do you say? Do you think they're right, or do they have to believe? You think they do? No? Yes? No?
They must be ready to, they must really want to heal. That's the most important thing. They must want to heal.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question, and we'll be going into that a lot. Do they want to heal?
Yeah, no, I think they do have to have faith.
You think they do?
I say to that question, I say, you don't need to have faith, no, but don't have any prejudgment coming open. So you're here, so you must think there's something for you, and sort of open yourself up to while they're there. What don't you allow it? Just they must allow things to happen. Well,
That's like asking people to relax. You ever try that? Just relax there. Right, well, I used to say, no, you don't have to believe in it at all. It just works anyway. Just, you don't need to believe in it. It's good if you do, but you don't have to. It works. And only recently, I realized, because I looked at the people that I've trained, and some are more successful than others, and very few are as successful as me. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet, it's just an observation. And I thought about that. I thought, why is that? And it's actually the reverse of that question. See, it doesn't really matter whether your patients believe it or not. What really matters is whether you believe it or not. If you believe it or not, that's what will make the difference, because it goes into this thing called dominant realities. Anyone heard of that kind of concept before? It's from sales, which I used to do as well, and I forgot to mention that. Not much of it, but sales is interesting to study from a psychological point of view. So how sales work, well, let's take it before we get into sales. If you've got 4 people, or 5, or whatever, whoever believes in their thing, their version of reality the most, will generally dominate the other people. Okay, that's how cults work a lot, is because the head of the cult believes more than the other people in the cult. In sales, if you've got two people, whoever basically believes more will dominate the other person. Okay? Now, you can use that to your advantage, or it happens naturally, certainly with people who come to see me, because I'm like, of course you're going to get better. Why wouldn't you get better? There's no good reason why you're not going to get better. You're breathing, you're there. I can't see why you won't get better. And when people don't get better, I'm like, that is weird. Why aren't you getting better? That's just so odd. You know? And I thought about the people who I've trained who were not doing so good, and they had major doubts. So when a person came to see them, they exuded this thing of, I don't know, either I don't know whether I'm any good at this thing, or, yeah, you know, it looks good, and, you know, I can see that other people are getting results, but I don't know if it really works. Really, really, really works. Like, really works. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of, not up here. Up here, yeah, it works, but, you know, really, really, right on the crunch when it's just me and the other person in the room, and they've asked me to do this thing, and I've got all this responsibility. You know, it's, if they don't get better, it's to do with me, it's my burden, all this kind of stuff. Then I'm not so sure if this cranial thing is actually as good as I thought it was to start off with. And that, the other person can feel that, and they kind of go, I don't know if I'm going to get better. Maybe I won't. Thought I might have, because I heard this cranial thing was good, but now that I'm standing in front of this person, I'm just getting the feeling they're not so sure that it's that good. So one of the things you need to know is what you really think. Like right down at the bottom. What are the sort of things that get in the way and stop you getting the sort of results that you want to get or that you think are possible? Because if you think that people should get better and they're not, then your inner reality and your outer reality don't really match up, do they? Part of what you want to do is make inroads into making the two of them match up so that you get what you want or what you think is possible. And we'll be talking about reality and perceptions of it and all that kind of thing as well. So, one of the ways we can do that is this thing called reframing. Anyone heard of reframing? I've given you a nice little note on it on page 6. Now I'm not going to go into that note particularly because I don't think we've got time. Maybe we'll come back to it if we have time. The specifics of it. Reframing as a kind of concept or a tool came out of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. Anyone heard of NLP? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool. It's big and it's a whole other field, and you know, it's good to know somebody who's good at it so you can refer people to it. But this reframing thing is very useful. It's very useful for the difficult aspects of anything, pretty much. But we're just going to talk about it in terms of craniosacral. So the classic kind of, just to give you a sort of an overview of the rough idea, the classic kind of reframing story, okay, is this guy is on a bus, and there's these kids on the bus, and they're freaking out. They're running up and down the aisle. They're screaming. They're shouting. They're tapping people on the head. They're just trouble. So after 15 minutes of this, the guy's sitting there. Oh yeah, the kid's father is there. He's not doing anything about it. He's just sitting there. So the guy's on the bus, eventually loses it, and he says to the father, "Hey, what's the story? You know, these kids are freaking out. Can you control them?" And the father kind of snaps out of it and says, "Oh, sorry, we just come from the hospital. Their mother's died." Okay. Now in that moment, could you feel it in your body? Shift. That's a reframe. Okay. Now the guy, of course, goes, "Jesus, sorry, mate. Look, I'll take care of them. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of the kids." Okay. So what happened, right? He had new information, new perspective, everything shifted. Yeah? That's a reframe. Does that make sense? I'll give you a slightly more popular reframe. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You know that song, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. And if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names because he had a big, red, shiny nose. Okay? So that's one perspective. So from Rudolph's point of view, without getting too much into Rudolph's psychology here, but from Rudolph's point of view, there's something wrong with him because all the other reindeers used to laugh and call him names. Okay? So when did the refrain happen? When did the refrain happen in the song?
When they needed him to light the way.
That's right. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Refrain. Well, you don't need to know the words, but you get the idea. Started off and he had this problem nose, and he was the butt of all the jokes, and he went from that into being the hero. Because it was, what changed? Did his nose change? No, nothing changed except his perception of it and everybody else's perception of it. That's a reframe. Okay? So we're going to do a little bit of reframing now on some of the more difficult things in craniosacral. So, well, I don't want to start telling you ones. What things are you having trouble with? Yeah?
Believing in my own ability.
Believing in your own abilities. Okay, that's bordering on something else, so I might come back to that one. Or if you can be more specific about it. I think you've been
Believing that I'm doing the right thing all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Come back to that. Yes.
Specifically, am I using the right technique?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right. Keep going.
I really wonder how much unwinding is good for a person in one treatment. And can one re-traumatize, how to know which pattern really is the one to carry on following or to not.
Mm-hmm.
A treatment can go on for 2 hours if you let it, and it seems, when does the communication quiet down and stop if it's not already stopping on its own?
Okay. What else?
I had a problem after the session to assess, to put an assessment down, to phrase exactly what pattern or...
You mean physically to write it down, or you're talking about reassessing the person?
To record it, to pin it down to a certain assessment, to a certain...
Okay, do you write it?
Yes, I write it.
And it's in the writing you have trouble?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yep. What else?
If you work on somebody, I had somebody recently with a terrible TMJ. But she was due for operation, and the specialist was going to relocate elsewhere, and she had to have this operation. But I worked on her just one session, and she could bite down on both sides. And then apparently the next day, because it was just one session, it went back slightly. She could only bite on one side. She had a locked jaw. Why does it go back? Why doesn't it stay the way you got her to where she could bite down on both sides of her teeth? So why doesn't it stay like that? Why does it go back? Because it went back the next day.
Okay. That's a good one, but will you ask me that later because it's a bit off the topic, this topic.
Oh, I thought, okay.
What?
I didn't understand what kind of problem you were looking for.
General things that you have trouble with.
Not sure you're doing the right thing for the person.
Okay.
Am I feeling what I'm feeling? Am I really feeling what I'm feeling?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Sort
sort of what I meant.
Who's got that one? Is what I'm feeling real?
This is what I meant.
Because it's
with
real
the
important.
assessment. This is more what I meant really with the assessment. What did I really feel?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, but
How do I know that that is really the problem? How do I know that that's what I have to work
All
on?
right. So how can we reframe that?
I just don't know where it's going to.
Hmm?
I don't
feel emotion, but I don't know how to evoke it sometimes, and where it's going. You know, the true core.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hang on to that one, and we'll do this other one first. This is what I'm feeling real. Yeah. I like that phrase, is what I'm feeling real, because it's real important. That I know. I think I wrote that down somewhere. I usually do. Or maybe I wrote it here. I wrote it here. Yeah, you can write it. So, we need to find a reframe on that. How can we reframe that? Because it's basically uncertainty, isn't it? You're talking about uncertainty.
Yeah.
I was nearly going to give it to you, but I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to make you work for it. How are you going to reframe that?
Trust in the process.
I am real, she is real, or he.
No, I don't mean the sentence per se, but this feeling of, it's very important that I want to help this person, but I'm not sure if what I'm feeling is, am I making this up, basically? Is this me or is this them? Which leaves me feeling very uncertain, and I'd really like to know. I don't want it to be grey, I want it to be black and white. I want it to be, here's what's wrong in big neon letters. I'd almost like it written out for me, because then I wouldn't have to try and write it out myself.
What about it's good not to know?
Well, why is it good not to know?
Because you're going into a into something that is new and undefined, and at least it's not what it was. But you don't need to know as long as you know that something happened.
But
Do you
maybe
need to?
am I certain
need to know.
about myself?
That's
And you are.
Now we're going for a real thing.
Maybe you can say this is interesting.
The unknown creates new opportunities.
Well, you can tell whether you've got a reframe going, because you feel a shift in your body. You suddenly feel,
Kitty was giving on it.
yeah, I could feel it. Everybody was kind of going, oh yeah, could you keep going?
Yeah.
That sounded pretty good. No little point to that. It's not complete though, but it's in the right track.
In other words, trust what you feel.
Well,
No, it was more that the unknown opens opportunity to new. That was
Yeah.
important.
Don't try to know.
yeah. See, in order for a reframe to work, it's got to make sense. So if you say something like, don't try to know, I can, like inside me, I'm going, yeah, that's true, that's so true, it's great, but it's not a reframe, because it doesn't make me go, doesn't make me feel good about uncertainty. It doesn't make me go, oh great, I want to be uncertain for the rest of my life. And that's, a reframe should really make you, like Rudolph is never going to feel bad about his nose again, is he? He's just, no. So a good reframe will give you that kind of shift on the inside that makes you, like, I don't know whether you noticed, but I actually just reframed my whole life there earlier on. Did you notice that? Instead of going, my mum and dad didn't want me when I was a baby, saying it was great because it really helped me. It's helped me develop my palpatory skill. My difficult childhood has helped me develop my palpatory skill. My terrible divorce, my separation from my daughter, it's all made me a better therapist. That's a reframe. That's a really useful reframe. And you can reframe anything in your life. And it's not bullshitting yourself, okay? Because that's what I'm saying. You see, if you trot out a platitude to yourself, that's kind of bullshitting yourself. That's not gonna work. But if you truly reframe it and go, yeah, I just wouldn't be as good at this if all that shit hadn't happened to me. That's a true, reframe. And it doesn't make, it's not like, oh, if I had my life to live again, I'd do it all that way again. But it sort of, puts a different perspective on it. So, you're going in the right direction with it's a changing process, yeah?
It's about being comfortable while sitting down. Just being comfortable.
But we're not comfortable, that's the problem. If we were comfortable with it. Because you see, that's what I'm saying, part of making progress with yourself is not denying all the different parts of you. And there's a part of you in there that's total skeptic and a cynic. And that's the bit that you kind of have to talk to. And if you say, what did you say?
Comfortable or okay thinking about it.
Yeah, well, it's in there going, yeah, right. No way. You know what I mean? But if you can explain it to that part, it'll go, yeah, okay, I'll buy that. So I think you're on the right track with the fact that it's a dynamic process you're involved in. It's a changing process. That's true. Yeah? Did you have your hand up?
Well, I just thought you could say, well, nobody knows anything anyway. So, you know, with this, you know, this person's here because she doesn't, because they don't know.
Is this real? Reality is multidimensional. You can't know the one now.
Yeah, but I guess it goes about the question that we question ourselves. Do we know or not know?
Why should we have to know? Because there is really no knowing in that, you know.
When people ask you, what did you feel? What did you feel? What did you find? And you feel you have to give them an answer. I just say, well, what did you feel? I just feel and then they tell me what they felt. I mean, like, okay. But,
Here's a hint.
okay.
Let's say this is you. Representation of you. This is your mind up here. And, you know, the deeper you go into yourself, the bigger it gets and you become vast and expansive. Where do you think healing, let's call it healing, happens? Here? Where? Yes, everywhere. But where's the really good stuff happen? Where's the really power-shifting stuff happen? Here? Down here somewhere? Down here maybe? And when it comes from down here, it comes through all this stuff. Because it has, you know, you've got to, this is your interface here. Yeah. Everyone with that? Anyone not with that? Anyone disagree with that? Or think it happens up here? No? Okay. So this is your mind.
What? Yes.
Come on, put it together.
So your mind.
Well, if it happens down here, where does certainty exist?
Inside.
Very good.
Oh, right.
So if you're certain, which bit are you using? So if you're certain, is anything really going to happen? Where it's really happening is down here, down in the depths, down in the non-verbal stuff, in the sensate part of you, down in your presence, where there's nothing. There's no personality, there's no body, there's no anything. There's just presence. It's down here. Okay? Now, this part can't really get its head around this part, can it? I mean, I'm using words here, and you're nodding, and the present part of you knows what I'm talking about, but the words don't really convey it, do they? They do convey it, but they don't explain it or define it. That's probably a better way of saying it. Yeah? So, this part is always going to have trouble with what you're doing down here. See, most of the world functions out of this stuff. Most of the world's been built with this stuff. You know, cars and video cameras and computers, which has given this bit the illusion that it really knows about stuff. Understandably. That's what science is all about. It's all about this stuff up here. Yeah. A lot of science. Yeah? So, this part of you is understandably convinced that it should know what it's doing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you see that if you get certain, you're off track. Do you see that? Yeah, isn't that a good reframe? Yeah. How do you feel about uncertainty now? You're all just dying to be uncertain. No, you're not going to be dying to be uncertain, but you understand uncertainty. You understand that it's inherent in the process. Okay? Now, when you think about the questions that you asked a minute ago, about I don't know whether I'm using the right technique or not. Okay? If you find yourself now thinking, this is the absolutely right technique, you will be concerned, and you'll be rightly concerned. Okay? If you're thinking, this is absolutely what's wrong with this person, I'm 100% sure I know what's wrong with this person, you'll be concerned now, and you should be concerned. Because now you understand that it's not supposed to work like that. You've got to be, your mind is playing catch-up the whole time with the bigger part of you, with the deeper part of you, the bit that's actually doing the work. Your mind is trailing behind that, doing its best to make sense, to make concepts, and to make words that it can use to describe to you, and more importantly, to the person that you're treating, because they're going to ask you, as you just said. So, what the hell is wrong with me? If people ask me what I'm feeling, I'm saying, well, I'm feeling pretty happy today. How are you doing? Because that's none of their business, really. When they ask me what's wrong with them, I'll tell them, and I'll give them detailed, I'll draw them diagrams, I'll give them anatomy sheets of paper of bones and all sorts of stuff on it. I'll give them all that stuff, and that's really helpful to tell people in lots of detail what you've picked up. Yeah.
But that's difficult.
Yeah? The whole thing's difficult. It's this is not an easy thing to do. Like generally, just as a general thing, it's a difficult thing to do. So it's just one more part of a difficult thing.
But to be able to express what's wrong, what you pick up, you have to bring it from down there to up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the difficult part.
Yeah. Well, 3 little words. Get out of the way. 4 little words. Get out of the way. That's how you do it. Often I'll take my hands off somebody. There's this kind of bubbling pot of things going on inside me about what's going on with the person. This is usually after the first time I've seen them. I only get into descriptions once pretty much with the person, like major, here's what I think is going on. If new things reveal themselves, I'll add to it and I'll explain it a bit more. But generally when I'm finished, I haven't got a clue what I'm going to say. Even when I sit down, and I'll take up the pen, I'll start writing, and I'll be writing, I'll be going, yeah, whoo, that's pretty good, as I'm writing it down, right? Because I'll be going, oh, there's that other thing, and that joins onto that thing. Often it joins up, like the words come at the very end, and I'll have been working on the person, and treating them, whatever, Like last time when I was here, I did the thing that I do in the, I think it's the 2nd trimester in my training. And it's about primary lesions, and we've been talking about it a little bit, but there's this demonstration thing I do where I put my hands on someone and I start telling them what's going on, okay? I don't do this when I'm treating people, it's just something, I think I did it on you, yeah. It's really impressive, I think, and everybody else seems very impressed. You were there. Always, everybody gets very impressed. I'm impressed, right? And I'm the one saying it, okay? Now, it's impressive because it sounds great. It sounds extremely confident. I really sound like you know what you're talking about here, John. And it's because I've just got out of the way and I've given myself permission to make a total fool of myself and to say whatever I think. And it's remarkable the way you just say it and it all joins up, and it actually, all I'm doing is reporting from down there. And the great thing is, because I've spent a lot of time getting really good at physiology and anatomy, I have all the words and I have the structures and the concepts, like the concepts of anatomy and what the thing looks like and what's joined onto and how it connects to the next bit. I have that pretty clear in my head, and I can turn it around in my head and I can turn it upside down in my head. So that part, as it's informing me, uses all that stuff. It just comes out of my mouth and it's great. And that cynical part of me is going, okay, yeah, that makes sense, I'll buy that. Does that any help? Try it out. Okay, so we're feeling a little bit better about uncertainty. It's not such a big, bad bogeyman. Okay, it's part of the process. And if you find yourself feeling certain, something wrong. Okay? What happens is you get used to uncertainty. Okay? In my experience, and I think I've said this, you'll notice that there's this list of things. It starts on page 3. goes through page 4 and a bit of page 5. And I'm not really giving you any, I'm asking you difficult questions, I'm pointing out difficult things, I'm not actually, there's no conclusions, very few conclusions there. It's more pointing out a lot of paradoxes and stuff. But in talking about uncertainty, I'm asking you, are you a master of it? And I'm saying that my observation of successful craniosacral therapists across the board is that they have mastered uncertainty. Yeah? I had a patient ask me recently, a long-term kind of patient, how we got into this discussion. And this woman would have heard me give that kind of diagnosis, you know, that I was talking about earlier on, the impressive type of diagnosis, lots of times. And, you know, said lots of helpful things to her. When we got talking about it, and she said, so how does it really work? Like, you know, when you go right down to it, how does it really work? And I said, you're asking me how it really works? Yeah. I said, I haven't got a clue. I haven't got a clue. It's a mystery. I don't know how it works. I don't know why people really get better. Because it's down here. I would have been kidding her to go, well, it's, you know, a semi-enclosed hydraulic system, blah, 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 blah. I don't know how it works. It is a mystery. And probably part of my success is that I'm okay with that. And my cynic on the inside's okay with that. Because it's seen it work enough times to go, well, I don't really know how it works, but I don't think I need to know how it works. And I like the fact that it does work. It makes me feel good. It's nice to help people. It's a good thing to do. So, make it your goal, if you like, to become a master of uncertainty. That you're really comfortable with it. If you think about the difficult times in your training, what you will have been up against is your desire for certainty. I want something substantial here. I want something solid, because it's all soupy and black in here and I'm lost. Anyone relate to that? Well, the thing is, that's what I'm saying, the reframe is, it's supposed to be. That's the territory. That's the territory you've engaged in. It's supposed to be that. And the paradox is that you have got to be certain about your uncertainty. Okay? That you've got to say to your patient, well, your dural tube is a little bit restricted on the right-hand side, pulls down into L1, that's radiating up into your tent, across onto your sella-tersica, and blah, 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 blah. You know? And you've got to sound like that when you're saying it. Because if I had walked in, okay, and I had gone, okay, thanks, Al. Well, this stuff's really hard. I don't really know if you're going to get it. I don't really know if I'm qualified to talk to you about this. How helpful would that be to you? That's all in me. It's all there. You know, your doubts don't go away. Your uncertainties don't go away. But it's not very helpful to convey them to people. You're not doing them any favors. I've seen people do this. They think they're being helpful. They think they're, you know, they'll say, oh, well, I think it's your dural tube, but, you know, it's a mysterious process, and I don't really know. And the patient is like, oh, for fuck's sake, I mean, forget it. They just don't come back. And the person's always gone, but I'm just being honest with you. You know, you've got to be careful with that. So, on the inside, you're going, I don't know, I think this is what's going on. And on the outside, to the person, you're giving yourself permission to be solid for them. Because what you're saying is probably right. Good chance you're probably right. Once you know that what you're saying, that there's a good chance that it could be improved on, or that you'll get more information, or that it'll improve, that tempers your certainty. Because people have got good bullshit detectors as well, and it's a subtle balance, and that's where the whole paradox thing comes in. The more you're comfortable with paradoxes, the easier it comes in, you get with it. Because people will have been to people will have been to therapists who have said, oh yes, 4 treatments and you're cured, I'll cure you. Yeah, you've all had that. And it's a horrible thing to say to anybody. And people who have gone to those therapists, not got better. So they'll be listening for bullshit. They'll be listening for, you know, that kind of thing. So on the one hand, you've got to say, here's what I think is going on. And you're very solid in that. But on the other hand, you're not going, I'm going to cure you, I'm 100% sure, you know that that's not going on behind the scenes in you, because they'll pick that up as well. You don't tell people you cure them, do you? Nobody, or heal them. Good.
They keep saying, please cure me, please heal me.
They do? And what do you say?
So know that they must heal themselves, that I'll assist, that I'll help them discover the area in their body that can bring up the wellness through the body. That I'm going to work with their wellness, not their sickness. I won't cure them, they'll cure themselves.
Yeah, that's right. I can't do it. I don't do it. No one can do it. No one can heal anybody else. It's impossible. It doesn't work like that. I can help. I'm really good at helping, but I can't make it happen. Yeah. Cool. Come out again. Anybody have anybody die on them?
No.
Any patients die?
No, thank you.
Yeah, just faint
No, thank
and
you.
pass out.
No, I don't mean on the table. I mean, yeah.
That people come and one of the patients die. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
someone comes to you with something terminal and they die.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
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 You've had that. When they were under your care. Not
Not
on the
in-
table,
Not on the table.
but within a course of treatment.
Yes.
Yeah? How do you feel about that?
It was more positive than I thought to assist in the process of the last time.
Did you know they were going to die?
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't a shock when they died. Okay. And I'm talking about someone who you think, they're going to get better and then they die. You get that?
I thought he was getting better. That was what I was feeling. That was what he was saying. But I know the story later what happened, so that's why I better. Because the family suddenly didn't support him anymore.
How did you feel about it though?
I was fine.
You were fine?
Because we had a talk while we were after the treatment. He even said, if he would die, he would be happy that he had a good life.
Okay. Well, that's good. Just the rest of you who haven't had the experience, just think about it for a minute. Someone comes to you for treatment, they've got cancer or something like that, or something you feel you can help with. Maybe if you think cancer is a bit beyond you, just whatever, something that you think that you can help with. They come to you for treatment, and you start and you get involved with them, and things go along, and they're saying, I'm going to fight this, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to whatever. And you're feeling pretty good about it, and it's all going kind of well, and then they die. How are you going to feel about that?
It's their time. It's their choice.
Yeah, I think that somewhere there is, did I miss something? Is there something I could have done that I missed this?
Anyone else?
And I'm nervous of missing something.
So,
Yeah.
if I could sum that up as feeling responsible in some way.
Yeah.
Anyone feel responsible? Now that's something well worth reframing. So, off you go.
It's not my responsibility. It's their part. It's their part. Can you really intervene if that person is meant to die? Or that person really wants to die, maybe at a subconscious level? Is it really your responsibility to try and divert them and keeping them alive?
That's a good question.
Maybe it's also things get revealed to you that is supposed to be shown, and certain things might not show up.
That's helpful. Did you get?
Well,
It's
things,
Brigitte, isn't it? Brigitte? Birgit.
Yeah.
Who's Birgit? You're Birgit. You're Brigitte. Brigitte Birgit. Got it? Say it again.
It might not be revealed to you. It's the choice of the patient as well to show what he wants to show, or the body,
Yeah.
wherever you want to.
That's certainly the beginning of a good reframe. Is that you only see what's revealed to you. So you can't miss anything if you think of it in those terms. You've got to get very good at seeing, and that's part of it. And you've got to ask yourself the question, because that's part of the paradox of the whole thing. But the reframe is, bottom line is, you only really see what you're shown. That's the beginning of it. it's gone in the right direction, I would say. Yeah, what else?
The illness, the disease
What
of
if
the
the person
patient
is trying to show you and you miss it? What if you all, that person maybe missed a sign, maybe they had
Sometimes you
facial
will,
signs.
sometimes you will.
Um,
Sometimes it'll actually be true, and you just have to live with that.
but the disease of
But most times, it's this.
the disease
That's what.
is also
Sorry, that's what I'm saying. That's part of the paradox. You've got to ask yourself the question. It's not like someone dies and you go, nothing was shown to me. I don't have to think about it. I'm going to do that reframing thing. I'm not going to feel miserable about it. Feel bad about it. You have to ask yourself. You have to kind of go, what did they actually die of? What actually happened? Was it something that I missed? Did I blow it? Because when you're starting off, when you're learning, you've got to nurture your palpatory skill. It's like a little flower or something you grow. You've got to take real good care of it. That's what the contraindication list is about when you at the beginning. These are the people not to treat. That's nothing to do with you doing any damage, I don't think. That's to do with you not scaring the shit out of yourself and ruining your palpatory skill for a year. Because if you get a bad fright at the beginning of your training, it'll put you back a year. You'll be afraid to put your hand on people for a year. I've seen it happen. Okay? I've seen people go, yeah, contraindications, I can do it, it'll be all right. Somebody has an epileptic fit or something on the table, and they freak out. It frightens the life out of them. And they don't want to put their hands on anyone for a long time after that. So in the beginning, you've got to nurture. Did that happen to you? Is that why you're laughing?
I had one patient, very first time, I didn't prepare him or anything, going into a full-blown birth process.
Yeah.
That patient was so scared, I never saw him again. I left messages and never got anything back.
When did that happen? At the beginning of your training?
No, short after, yeah.
Did it disturb you?
Well, I still see myself short after training.
You
We
would?
only have 3-4 years, all of us. So
Yeah,
I
no,
still see myself in the beginning.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the very beginning, like the first year.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's crushing for something like that to happen. Then once you're qualified, or there's a kind of a point around the midway mark in your training when you have to start asking yourself the hard questions. Like as a trainer in the beginning, I'm going, oh yeah, whatever you feel is probably right, and on the inside I'm going, probably not. But you have to nurture it. You have to, this part's got to relinquish control a bit. It's got to let go of it so this deeper stuff can start to come through. And if you're too censoring of yourself, it can't get through. So it's good in the beginning to, really believe what you're feeling and not ask yourself too many hard questions, not feel too bad if people get sick, straight after they've seen you, and not to think about that stuff too much. But then there comes a point when you have to start asking yourself, was it me? Was my intention too strong? Did I do the wrong technique? Did I, you've got to start asking yourself those harder questions. And that's something that doesn't stop. And in fact, it gets probably more, not ruthless, but more intense the more experience you've got. Because the more experience you've got, the more reference you've got to filter stuff through. You can reference back and go, I wonder, did I actually miss something there? Or did I handle that wrong? Did I miss that person was not ready for that? So that turned out to be way too confrontational for them. And if I'd waited another week or two, they might have been ready. You've got to ask yourself those hard questions. Hang on, I'm making a really great point here. You've got to ask yourself those questions. If someone dies, in any case, if it doesn't go, if they stop coming to you or whatever, that's it. You have to ask yourself, how did I fuck it up? You've got to be just really straight with yourself about that, because that makes you better. It forces you to be better. That's good. But there comes a point when you can do that too much and start to erode your own self-confidence, which is actually going to hurt other people, not only you. The people that if you start eroding your own self-confidence, next time you go in to treat someone, you'll be putting that out a bit. And they'll be going, they don't really believe in this, or they don't really believe in themselves as much as they did last week. What's happened? Yeah. Because, God, I hope I don't get too lost here, but this is a good point as well. You know the way you've spent all this time developing your palpatory skills and being sensitive and all that? No, I was talking about my childhood and all that. Everybody is as sensitive as everybody else. Okay, that's my experience. Everybody is as sensitive as everybody else. The only difference between us here and people who seem like they're not sensitive is they're not aware of it. Okay? That's the only difference. You've just spent a lot of time getting really aware of it, but people read you. You know, I mean, what is it they say? 97% of communication. No, sorry, 93% of communication is not to do with words. It's non-verbal. So only 7% of what I'm communicating here is the words. Okay? People read each other all the time. So if your confidence is eroded a little bit, people pick it up. They won't be able to put any words on it, might even be able to say it, but they can feel it. So you've got to ask yourself the question, the hard question. For a period of time, you've got to review what you did, very important. But then there comes a time when you shift into, no, I think I did everything that I could have, and okay, I screwed it up a bit there, but I really don't think that caused the person to do this or die or whatever. And then you get into this side of things, which is, if I didn't see it, it probably wasn't revealed to me. That's the reframe side of it. That stops you eroding your own confidence. Yeah, now, what's your question?
What about the question where I can see, like, I've got somebody that you constantly decompensate every treatment. You say, well, this is actually the right thing. I mean, you have to go through the decompensation to come to a healing. But it might be very hard. Is it really in place
It's
to
what
do
really-
so, to severely decompensate a person
Well, that
again
kind
and
of,
again and again?
that highlights or illuminates a perspective that you're doing something to the person.
Yes, that's fine.
Which
I
I
can
would-
tell myself that, but
No, I would disagree with that. I don't do anything.
no. Oh, I see.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Often, what it feels like to me when I'm treating people, it's a process of negotiation. I feel like I'm brokering a deal with the deeper part of the person and the top part of the person. The deeper part of the person is what brought them in the room. The top part of the person is usually the bit that's giving me the hard time. Have that experience? Somebody comes in and they does this work, I don't think what you're doing is any good, I don't think you're any good, I don't think you're a very good therapist, or anything that they can pick up off you, they'll try and reflect back to you to put you off the job. Had that happen? So often, when you're working with somebody's body, or their system, let's call it a system, because there's a lot more than a body there, you'll be getting this big rush of, woo, someone's listening to me finally. Okay, I want to do this, I want to move the furniture around here, I want to open this thing up and close that thing down. Often it's a case of, whoa, we're not going anywhere here, I'm going to, I think if you just keep bringing them back, we can get everything done, but if you do everything too quickly, they're not going to come back. You think of it like that?
Are you now talking to the
Yeah,
body
well,
yourself?
yeah.
Do you talk your internal dialogue?
Yeah, I don't like to talk in my head even,
Yeah.
because it's too structured. But the communication is that. It's, yes, I see everything that you're saying. Yes, I'm fully supportive, delighted, just fully here for you. This is great. We'll do fantastic things together. But we've got this other part of you that is a bit cynical. And if you have a big reaction, if you cause a big reaction here, if you cause a big healing crisis tomorrow, they are going to blame me. Okay? I don't mind that. I've been blamed lots of times. But they probably won't come back. And we won't get to have this chat again. And, you won't get to do all this stuff that you want to do. So can we work something out here where we have a mitigated process of healing? Because there's a whole lot of you there.
What you're saying now is that you're communicating in the treatment.
Yeah, in my contact, in my hands, in my presence, in everything.
Yeah.
Because it's really, like, being able to see all this stuff has a huge effect on a person's system. They really feel great that somebody's finally heard them, these deeper parts, the parts that have been pressing the pause button on their life to get the person's attention, and the person's been, in disharmony with themselves and upset and everything. When there's somebody that's kind of going, yeah, okay, I can see that, all right, it's going great. And because of that, then you can start to negotiate a deal with the person's system to, you know, we've got more than just an animal here that's in pain. We've got a whole complicated, sophisticated, multifaceted system. And, you know, we don't want to blow it by, you know, we need to be able to get it to release in such a way that it's not going to be too confronting for the whole system.
That was Julia's question.
Is
How to
there,
know when to stop and how to stop.
is there really a
It's
wrong...
not actually, because I want to come back to that one. Yeah.
Sorry, is there really a wrong procedure? Because to me it feels, it doesn't matter what you do, the body will do whatever you do, will use whatever, well, not what you're doing. If you're using a wrong can you use a wrong technique for a person? I can't
Yes.
believe, can you?
Yes. You can really get it wrong. Absolutely. And you can hurt people and you can mess them up in the head. You can do a lot of damage. Because, if you think about it, you've got the skills to get under people's defenses. And people's defenses are good because they're for survival. Okay? And you've got this secret key that gets in through all that stuff. And you're allowed access to very vulnerable, deep parts of people. So yes, you can screw it up badly.
Can you give us an example, perhaps? Can you think of a good example? I'm just want to...
Well, just go along to some bad craniosacral therapists. They're all over the place. There's people who've had bad training. They've had enough to be able to get in a certain level. Okay, I referred somebody. Somebody came they flew up from Melbourne. They did it was the first part, so they did 6 days, and, you know, I treated them beforehand. They knew something was going on. The last day, the last afternoon, they just, everything started coming out. They remembered this horrible thing that had happened to them, very, very grisly. I had to intercede. They were catching a plane in an hour. What can you do? I couldn't do much. I could just basically try and help her put herself together so she could get on a plane and go back to Melbourne. While she was on the plane, I rang her partner and told her partner to just make sure she made it to the airport and to meet her and all this kind of thing. And I contacted somebody in Sydney to find out if there was somebody in Melbourne I could refer this woman to. A woman in Sydney said, oh yeah, there's this somebody in Melbourne who trained in a similar college to I did. They don't do assessments, so they don't do the same kind of assessment that I do, so I'm always going to know. So you don't know what you're going to get there. Anyway, she went along. So she went along to this woman for treatment. Now, what the woman released was a sexual abuse thing. That's what came out of the last day. So a week or so later, I rang the patient. Let's call her patient. How did it go? Not great, John. What happened? Well, my panic attacks have increased. My anxiety is very high. It's off the scanners. I'm thinking about going back on the antidepressants. She was very shaky. She was in worse shape than when she left, and she was in pretty bad shape when she left. I said, well, what happened? She said, well, first of all, the woman kept me waiting for about half an hour. It's not great, but it's not too bad. She made me sit in her front room watching TV with her kids while she was seeing things. That's not great. Then when when we were sitting down together in the treatment room, she was taking the case history. She started telling me about being sexually abused in a past life and how this helped her have some sort of empathy with my experience. Right? Anyone having trouble with how just dull that is? Then, when I was lying on the table, and she was just going up the listening post, it sounded like to me, when she got to my hips, she said, you know, you've got really sexy hips. You've got a really sexy body. You know. Now bear in mind, she's got her hands on the woman at this stage, which is her key in. Okay? So, for someone to verbalize that, you can imagine where their head is, or I'd rather not imagine where their head is, but you can tell it's not a great space. So because of that, that woman, that patient, was just really screwed up by it. Now I rang that woman and I fucked her out of it on the phone. And she was like, what? What did I do? I was trying to be empathic. I did have a sexual abuse in a past life. I was going, if you can't hear how wrong that is, we should just stop the conversation now. And with the whole sexy body thing, I was just trying to help her see her body in a new light. It's like, so that woman was very messed up. So I think that's a good example of how you can mess people up. And that kind of thing's going on all the time, unfortunately. And I mean, we do it ourselves, to a lesser degree. We make mistakes and we screw it up and do damage.
But this is more practitionership, with the story that you're telling now. It's not so much about holds and technique as such.
Well, no, it isn't. That's what I'm saying is, you see, because she had her hands on her, and because she was able to access, she was able to get under, she wouldn't have got a lot of access, but she would have been able to get under that woman's defenses. Because her presence was screwy, because her contact was crap, because she was inappropriate in her words, which meant she would have been inappropriate in her inner state, she would have done lots of damage. That's why the woman's symptoms all got worse, because her system was re-traumatized at a deep level by this crap practitioner. That's what I'm talking about. And basically, Nellian's question was, can we do damage? Well, here's a good example of doing damage.